The silent colony. The colony of Helios 3 floated on the edge of human space. It was not a rich colony and not a famous one, but it was home to hundreds of thousands of people. Families lived there. Workers mined the rocks, farmers grew food under glass domes, and children played in the streets. For years it was quiet and peaceful. The colony sent its shipments on time, paid its taxes, and lived far from the politics of Earth. People thought of Helios 3 as a small light in the darkness, steady and safe. Then one day, the light went out. At first, Earth's central network noticed a delay. A transmission that was due at midnight never arrived. The system flagged it, but delays were not rare. Sometimes storms cut signals, sometimes relays broke, and sometimes human error played its part. No one worried. A day passed. Another day passed. Still no word. A patrol ship was sent. The small craft entered the system and scanned for signals. The officers expected to find a broken relay or a power loss. Instead, they found nothing at all. The colony was silent. Its signal towers were dark. The domes gave no light. The entire world looked as if it had gone to sleep. The patrol ship circled the planet again and again. They tried to make contact. They sent coded signals. They waited for any reply. None came. One officer swore he saw movement on the ground, flashes of fire, but the sensors showed no survivors. Then, as the ship prepared to leave, a broken object floated into their path. It was a beacon, cracked and scorched. They pulled it aboard and listened. The recording was short. Screams, explosions, the thunder of weapons, and a voice not human. It was sharp and alien, cutting through the noise. The message ended with static. No one spoke for a long time. When the patrol returned to Earth, the news spread like fire. A human colony had fallen, and no one had seen it happen. Leaders gathered, soldiers whispered, and families cried. The name Helios 3 became a wound in the heart of humanity, but worse than the loss was the silence. No survivors, no warning, no demand for surrender, nothing but destruction and a cruel alien voice in the dark. The galaxy had always watched humanity with a mix of fear and curiosity. Humans were newcomers to the stars, younger than the old empires, but they were known for their stubborn will. Many thought humanity would grow slowly, learn and accept the rules of the galaxy. Others thought humanity would never be strong enough to rise. The destruction of Helios 3 gave them an answer. It showed that someone believed humans could be crushed before they grew too powerful. In the halls of Earth's leadership, anger grew. Some wanted to call for talks. They said maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was pirates, maybe it was not war. But the families of Helios 3 demanded more. They wanted justice, they wanted vengeance, and they were not alone. Across colonies and star systems, humans asked the same question. If we do nothing now, who will be next? The military chiefs met in secret. They reviewed the beacon again and again. They studied the alien voice. They compared it with every known species. The match came at last. It was an empire on the far side of the spiral arm, known for raids and cruelty. They had fought smaller powers before. They had taken slaves and burned cities. Now they had destroyed a human world. The decision was made in silence. No speeches, no announcements, no cries of revenge. Only one truth was spoken. Humanity would not forget Helios 3. On the colony itself, nothing remained but ruins. Satellites showed empty streets, burned homes, and broken ships. The glass domes were shattered. Ash floated in the thin wind. The place that had once been a light in the darkness was now only a grave. A grave so deep it echoed across the stars. But what the galaxy did not know was that humanity was already moving. Factories turned to war production. Dockyards worked without pause. Shipwrights built warships at a speed no one thought possible. Ordinary men and women lined up to serve. They were not soldiers before, but they became soldiers now. All of them carried the same thought. Never again. Helios 3 had fallen. But its silence had spoken louder than any words. It told humanity that peace was broken. It told them that the galaxy was not safe. It told them that if they did not act, others would fall. And so the silence of Helios 3 became the drumbeat of war. The gathering storm. The loss of Helios 3 became more than a tragedy. It became a shadow that stretched across every human world. On distant colonies, people whispered about it in marketplaces and homes. Parents told children not to speak of it, but the children already knew. They had heard the recordings. They had seen the images of blackened ruins and broken domes. Helios 3 was not simply gone, it had been erased. And in that silence, a single thought grew stronger with each passing day. This could happen again. Earth's leaders tried to calm the people. They spoke of caution, of diplomacy, of waiting for proof before action. But no one listened. The families of Helios 3 had sent out their cries, and those cries had reached every heart. Miners on far-off asteroids, traders moving between stations, soldiers patrolling borders, all of them asked the same question. When will we strike back? Factories that once built tools now forged weapons. Shipyards that had rested now blazed with fire and light. Their cranes stretching into the sky like iron giants. On the ground, workers moved day and night, welding, hammering, sealing. Every new ship was faster than the last. Engineers no longer counted the hours, they only counted how many ships could leave the docks before sunrise. The galaxy noticed. Alien merchants reported vast movements of metal and fuel. Spy ships lingered near human borders, watching the skies glow with the birth of new vessels. Some laughed at the effort. They called humans reckless children, building more than they could control. Others grew uneasy. They had seen humanity rise from nothing before, and they feared what might happen if rage became their guiding star. But within human space there was no doubt. The storm had begun to gather. Military councils spread across dozens of systems. Generals met by secure transmission, their faces pale and grim on the screens. They spoke not of defense but of offense. They spoke of strategy, of routes, of how to strike an enemy empire far across the spiral arm. Each plan was harsher than the last. Each proposal carried the same fire. This was not to be a small answer, it was to be a roar that shook the galaxy. In hidden chambers, fleets were organized. First hundreds of ships, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Soon the numbers became too large to count. Records show that by the third month after Helios 3's fall, humanity had already gathered more ships than most galactic empires kept in their core fleets. And still the shipyards did not stop. Volunteers came in waves. Men and women from every walk of life signed their names. Farmers, miners, students, workers, they all wanted to serve. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted justice. Some simply wanted to make sure no other world would ever face what Helios 3 had faced. The training centers filled beyond capacity. Commanders had to turn people away. Yet still they came, carrying weapons they had built themselves, ready to fight with or without approval. The alien empire that had destroyed Helios 3 sent no message. They did not claim responsibility. They did not threaten. They said nothing. Their silence was a weapon of its own. But to humanity, that silence only confirmed guilt. If the aliens had thought their act would frighten humans into weakness, they were wrong. It did the opposite. It set fire to their blood. One by one, colonies began to contribute their own fleets. Some sent cruisers, some sent carriers, some sent only a handful of frigates. But all of them sent something. No world wanted to stand aside. Every world wanted to be part of what was coming. The name Helios 3 became a call, and each new ship bore it in memory. Some painted the name across their hulls. Others whispered it as a vow before battle practice. By the 6th month, observers said humanity was no longer a collection of scattered colonies. It had become a war nation. 500,000 warships stood ready. Carriers bristling with fighters. Dreadnoughts armed with weapons that could split moons. Swarms of smaller craft that could bleed an enemy fleet dry in hours. It was not just a force. It was a tide. The galaxy began to tremble. Messages spread in secret across alien worlds. Old powers whispered warnings. They told each other that the humans were too young, too unstable, too dangerous to gather such strength. Some called for coalitions to rise against them before it was too late. Others said to stay back, to wait and see what humanity would do. No one dared to speak openly because they feared what might happen if humanity heard their voices. And in the heart of Earth, the commanders made their final choice. They would not wait for talks. They would not wait for peace. They would not wait for another colony to fall. Orders were sent. Ships were fueled. Crews were armed. Every engine was made ready. The storm had been gathering for months. Now it was ready to break. And across the stars, for the first time in history, the galaxy prepared to see what 500,000 human warships would look like when they rose together in fury. The first signal of war, the day the fleet moved, began without fanfare. No trumpet, no anthem, no parade. The 500,000 ships simply woke as one. Engines burned in silence, glowing against the void. One by one, they lifted from docks and stations, sliding into formation until the stars themselves seemed to vanish behind them. Entire constellations disappeared, hidden by steel. Civilians on nearby colonies stood outside their homes, watching with wide eyes as the ships passed overhead. The sight was not just awe, it was terror. People whispered that nothing in the galaxy could stop such a force. Children pointed at the sky, believing they were watching the beginning of a story that would be told for centuries. And perhaps they were. From Earth's command station, the order was given: transmit. Across the galaxy, every relay, every channel, every hidden line of communication carried a single human message. It was not long, not complex, and not polite. It said only this: this war is not conquest. It is vengeance. The message shook the galaxy. Traders heard it in the middle of markets. Soldiers of other empires heard it in their barracks. Leaders heard it as they sat in chambers of power. Everyone understood. Humanity was not expanding. Humanity was not negotiating. Humanity was coming for blood. The alien empire that had destroyed Helios 3 received the message as well. Their council sat in silence, staring at the words. Some laughed, calling humans weak. Some dismissed it, saying the numbers were lies. But their spies already reported truth. They had seen the fleets with their own eyes. They had counted as best they could the endless rows of ships. Even the bravest among them felt a cold weight settle in their chests. The fleet advanced slowly, but not aimlessly. Human admirals had chosen their path with care. They avoided neutral worlds, avoided trade hubs, avoided anything that might confuse the galaxy about their intent. They wanted one thing only: to strike the empire that had burned their colony to ash. And as the fleet moved, they left trails of silence in their wake. No pirate dared approach. No rival dared block their path. Even the stars themselves seemed to grow quiet. On board the ships, the crews were tense. Some whispered about home. Some whispered about death. But when they gathered together, they all spoke of Helios 3. They remembered the beacon's screams. They remembered the silence of the colony. And each soldier, each pilot, each commander carried that silence inside like a stone. They would not forget it. They would not forgive it. The first border systems of the alien empire came into view. Outposts spotted the human fleet long before it arrived. Messages were sent back to their homeworlds, urgent and panicked. But no order came. Their leaders were divided, uncertain if this was truly war or only a threat. By the time they understood, it was too late. The human fleet stopped at the edge of alien space. No shot was fired. No ultimatum was given. Instead, the humans transmitted again. This time it was not words. It was the recording from Helios 3. The screams, the explosions, the alien war cry. The galaxy heard it again, louder, carried on every frequency. Then silence, and after that silence came movement. The 500,000 ships advanced. Alien fleets rushed to meet them. Hundreds of warships, then thousands, rising from hidden stations and border worlds. Their commanders told themselves numbers would save them. They believed that humans, though angry, were too young, too untested to fight on such a scale. But as the first clash came, their belief broke. The humans struck with precision. Waves of fighters poured from carriers. Dreadnoughts unleashed weapons that tore through enemy lines like paper. Frigates swarmed, cutting supply ships apart. Entire enemy squadrons vanished in minutes. The battle was not just fought, it was consumed. Observers from other empires tried to watch. What they saw chilled them. They saw discipline where they expected chaos. They saw unity where they expected fear. They saw rage sharpened into something cold and merciless. It was not the wild strike of children. It was the deliberate strike of a power that had chosen to remember a single colony's fall and turn it into fire. When the first battle ended, wreckage drifted in silence. Human losses were real, but the enemies were worse. Whole fleets had been erased. Survivors fled deeper into their own empire, carrying tales of human warships that moved like a tide of steel. The signal of war had been sent, not only in words, not only in recordings, but in fire. The galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity would not stop. Humanity would not bow. Humanity had risen. The clash of empires, the galaxy had seen wars before. Empires had risen, empires had fallen, and fleets had burned in the void. But no one had seen what humanity had now brought into the stars. 500,000 warships moved as one body, a tide of steel that rolled forward with cold precision. It was not the chaos of revenge. It was the discipline of vengeance turned into strategy. The alien empire that had destroyed Helios 3 gathered everything they could. They called fleets from their borders, from their core worlds, even from systems they had long left undefended. Their admirals told their soldiers that humans were reckless, that this was only a flash of rage. They promised that the human armada would collapse once it met true resistance. They promised that numbers would save them. When the two forces met, the void itself seemed to shrink. Thousands of alien warships filled the darkness, their engines glowing like stars, their weapons primed to erase humanity from history. But opposite them stretched the human armada, endless, disciplined, silent. The aliens sent out messages of warning, threats, insults. The humans answered with nothing. Silence was their shield, silence was their sword. The first clash was like the tearing of the universe. Human dreadnoughts opened fire, their cannons unleashing beams so bright they carved lines across the dark. Alien cruisers fell apart in seconds, broken into pieces that drifted in glowing clouds. Fighters screamed from carriers swarming like insects too many to count. The aliens fired back, their own weapons blazing, but the humans moved as if they had trained for this war since birth. Every soldier carried Helios 3 in their hearts. Every shot was fueled by the memory of the fallen colony. Where other fleets might have wavered, humanity only pressed harder. Commanders spoke in short orders, their voices steady, their tone cold. There was no panic. There was no fear. There was only fire. Alien admirals tried to shift the battle, ordering flanks to strike at weak points. But when they moved, the humans were already waiting. Fleets of frigates darted in perfect formation, cutting off supply ships. Battleships held the line without faltering. Carriers released waves of drones that filled the void, overwhelming every gap. It was not a battle of chance. It was a storm, planned and unleashed. Worlds near the border watched the sky burn. Civilian stations felt the shockwaves as fleets tore each other apart. Traders hid, miners sealed their domes, and refugees fled in silence. Across the galaxy, hidden observers recorded the war. Some empires prayed the humans would fail. Some prayed they would succeed. All of them understood that whatever the outcome, the galaxy would never be the same. The alien empire fought with desperation. They sent reserve after reserve. They sacrificed whole fleets to slow the human tide. But the tide did not slow. For every ship destroyed, 10 more pressed forward. For every human loss, the survivors fought harder. The alien commanders began to see the truth that their leaders had denied. Humanity was not breaking. Humanity was rising. The battles spread like fire across systems. Space stations fell. Border worlds burned. Human warships carved through defenses that had stood for centuries. Every strike was deliberate, every target chosen with care. The humans did not waste time on glory or conquest. They wanted to break the empire that had dared to erase Helios 3. One by one, alien fleets collapsed. Ships fled, scattering into the void, carrying stories of terror. Survivors told of humans who fought like machines, who spoke little, who moved with a unity that no one could match. They told of endless ships, of weapons too strong, of discipline too sharp. The stories spread faster than the humans themselves, and with each story, fear grew deeper. And still the armada moved forward. The galaxy now trembled. Old empires called secret meetings. Some discussed alliances against humanity. Some considered surrender before a single shot was fired at them. But no one acted. All of them waited, watching, too afraid to move, too uncertain of what the humans might do if challenged. Back in human space, the families of Helios 3 listened to the reports. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They wept, for every victory carried the weight of loss. But in their sorrow there was pride. Their colony had been destroyed, but it had not been forgotten. It had become the fire that lit 500,000 ships. The clash of empires had begun. And with each battle it became clearer that the galaxy was no longer ruled by the old powers. A new force had risen, a force that remembered every loss, a force that could not be ignored. The name of Helios 3 had become something greater than a tragedy. It had become the banner of a war. The day the galaxy remembered, the war ended not with a roar but with silence. The alien empire that had destroyed Helios 3 no longer stood as it once had. Its fleets were shattered, its worlds scarred, its people scattered across the stars. What had once been a power that struck fear into neighbors had become a broken remnant. And at the center of that ruin was humanity's armada, 500,000 warships that returned to their stations one by one, their engines dimming, their weapons cooling, their silence heavy. For the people of Earth and the colonies there was no celebration. Streets were not filled with music or banners. Soldiers did not dance in victory. Instead, there were memorials. Names of the lost were read aloud in long ceremonies that lasted for days. Families stood together in silence, remembering the colony that had begun it all. Helios 3 was not alive again, but its memory had been carried into every battle, and now it was carved into the history of the galaxy. Across alien worlds, whispers grew into legend. They spoke of the human fleet as if it were not an army, but a force of nature. Survivors from broken alien ships told stories of how the humans fought. They said human warships did not hesitate. They said human soldiers did not fear death. They said the humans fought with one voice, as if the silence of Helios 3 itself guided their hands. Some survivors called them demons. Others called them angels of vengeance. All agreed they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. The galaxy remembered. Old empires that had once looked down on humanity now looked at them with fear. Neutral powers changed their maps, marking human space in bold red lines, not as territory, but as warning. Traders gave human convoys wide paths. Pirates vanished from human routes, too afraid to strike. Even distant empires, untouched by the war, spoke the same vow: never wake the fury of Earth. But inside human space, leaders gave no boast. They issued no threat. They simply reminded their people that the fleet was strong because it had to be, because no colony could be left undefended again. 500,000 warships remained, not as conquerors but as guardians. Humanity did not want the galaxy. Humanity wanted only to live. But the galaxy now knew that if anyone tried to erase them, the answer would always come. For the families of Helios 3, the end of war was not an end at all. They looked at the ruins of their homeworld and saw ash. Yet they also saw something else: justice. Their colony had been silenced, but it had not been forgotten. Its silence had awakened the greatest fleet the stars had ever seen. Its destruction had carved fear into the heart of the galaxy. In death, Helios 3 had spoken louder than it ever had in life. Generations later, children would still ask their elders about the day the Armada rose. They would hear how the sky darkened with ships, how the galaxy trembled, how an empire was broken. They would hear that one human colony's silence had changed the balance of power forever, and those children would learn the lesson carved into the stars: humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. The galaxy remembered because it had no choice. It remembered the 500,000 ships that moved like a single shadow. It remembered the message that had echoed across every world: this war is not conquest. It is vengeance. And it remembered the silence that followed. A silence heavier than words. A silence that told everyone what would happen if they ever dared to test humanity again. And so the story of Helios 3 became more than history. It became mourning. It became legend. It became the day the galaxy remembered,